Everybody, all the Spygate plotters meet in the Obama Oval Office. 7 days later, magically, a FISA warrant appears. On the same day, they hatch a plot to say, no, it was Russian disinformation. It wasn't the Steele dossier. So as the great Andy McCarthy points out in his piece in National Review, which will be in the show notes again today, I encourage you to read it. It's really good. It's a pretty good timeline about why, again, and what I'm telling you, why they needed to get rid of Flynn, because Flynn knew. National Review, Andy McCarthy. The FBI set Flynn up to preserve the Trump-Russia probe. Read this piece. Again, Bongino.com/newsletter. I will send you these articles. There's a lot of great takeaways in the piece, so I encourage you to read the whole thing. But in the interest of time, here is the one golden nugget in there. Remember, McCarthy's arguing the same thing I am. They had to get rid of Flynn because he knew about this Trump-Russia probe, and he knows it's a hoax. Quote, McCarthy, Trump was a political phenomenon, but a novice when it came to governance. He was, not his fault, folks. He wasn't a politician. He was supported by the Republican foreign policy. It's important. He was not supported by the Republican, I'm doing what they did to Lovinger. He was not supported by the Republican foreign policy and national security clerisy, which had gone out of its way to antagonize him in the campaign. The staff he brought into the government consisted mainly of loyalists. They were some skilled advisors too, but their experience was not in the national security realm. This gets interesting. The exception was Flynn. The former head of the Defense Intelligence Agency knew how the spy agencies worked. He knew where and how they kept secrets. He had enough scars from his tangles with the intelligence bureaucracy that he knew how the game was played. He knew how intelligence officials exploited information or selectively withheld it. Oh, yeah, Andy. I love Andy. Even when we heads a little bit. One of the smartest attorneys out there. And a really, really good man. McCarthy nails it. Flynn knew where the bodies were buried. Not only know where the bodies were buried because of the letter the UK sent him, he starts talking about it to Comey. Hey, that guy Steele, are those sources legit? Comey's probably like, hey guys, did we even interview Steele sources? Nah. We didn't? Conveniently, Steele sources, his main primary subsource, gets interviewed about a week later, and they find out that the primary subsource they should have interviewed before they swore his information was right, Joe? But if you're going to swear a guy's information is true, Joe, do you think maybe you should ask him first?
Yeah, it's a big thing.
Good idea.
You got to ask. Yeah.
Kind of big, right?
Yeah.
Steele's primary subsource said this. Did you interview the primary subsource? Flynn's asking. No. Kind of a problem. Or to quote Armacost, yeah, kind of a big thing to interview him. I would agree. Joe would have been a better FBI agent than these morons at the top. See, at least Joe would have interviewed the subsource. They interview him after Flynn's question, not before. Why? Because they've got their fingers crossed and they're desperately hoping this guy's going to be legit. He's not. He shows up to the interview and goes, hey, I didn't say that to Steele. You idiots got hoaxed. So then, of course, they have to start the next week, this January 12th thing, because now they know that they've been spying on the president based strictly on a political hoax started by Hillary Clinton. It's as simple as that. So as I said yesterday, and this is where the new info starts to come in, they figure to themselves, Joe, okay, so we can't say we've turned into the political hoax falling for political hoax FBI. So let's just say we fell for Russian disinformation. That's probably less damaging. So that starts, if you look at footnote 350, as I said yesterday, on January 12th. Here's a footnote to the IG report where they indicate that on January 12th, that some of the information they didn't have high confidence in, Steele's reporting, and assess that it may be Russian disinformation. You can see it in the middle of this footnote right here. So someone at the FBI, clearly around January 12th, around the time they're interviewing the primary subsource, they should have interviewed before they used this information, as Joe says, kind of a big thing. Yeah. Now they figure, gosh, we better not say that we spied on the Trump team due to a Hillary Clinton paid political hoax. Let's just say the Russians got us. That doesn't sound as bad. So that plot gets hatched with the media on January 12th. Why is January 12th important? Well, what else happens literally on January 12th? Well, I did a little Google search and I put FISA renewals. In other words, the renewal of the warrant to spy on the Trump team. And Joe, just a question here. Would it be crazy, I mean, really nuts, if the FISA warrant to spy on Carter Page and essentially the Trump team by default, that they were relying on the Steele dossier to get, wouldn't it be really crazy if the same day they hatched the Russian disinformation plot, January 12th, after Flynn starts asking questions on January 7th, wouldn't it be really nuts if the FISA warrant was actually renewed to continue to spy on the Trump team on January 12th? Would that be crazy?
Oh, Dan, that's really crazy. Yeah.
It can't be.
That's crazy.
So just a simple Google search, you come up with this, and you'd be like, no way. Here we go, justice.gov. The first FISA application was on October 21st, and the 3 renewal applications were on January 12th, April 7th, and June 29th. Wouldn't that be nuts? The same day they hatched the Russian disinformation plot, somebody goes, hey, by the way, we better get on that FISA. But you may say to yourself, some of you legal eagles out there, something I noticed, they don't just hatch, they didn't write the thing up on January 12th. In my experience with people in the intel community and others, now, to be clear, I have not sworn out a warrant in front of the FISA court. I've sworn out warrants before, many of them in the criminal courts, but not the FISA courts. But I know a lot of these folks, and some decent sources have gotten back to me and said, Dan, you'd never guess, but how long do you think it takes? The FISA court generally requests a certain notification time lag. Like, in other words, hey, we're going to come, you don't just show up at the FISA court. You know what I'm saying, Joe? We're going to show up and we're going to arrive with, they need notification. So how far out do you think they typically request notification before you show up in court and swear out a warrant? Wouldn't it be really crazy if the FISA courts, Joe, said, hey, we need 7 days to process these warrants? Because 7 days from January 12th would be when? Would be January 5th. And what happened on January 5th? January 5th was the meeting in the Obama White House between Susan Rice, who knows Steele's information is a hoax, James Comey, and others. You know the meeting that just days later, on January 20th, Susan Rice writes an email and says, hey, we had this January 5th in the meeting in the White House with Obama, and he told us to do everything by the book. You know, the CYA email or the cover her email. Isn't that weird? So January 5th, all of the Spygate colluders who now know this is a total hoax, the UK's telling them. January 5th, 2017, they meet in the Obama White House. Susan Rice is like, no, nothing was said. It was all by the book. Weird email, right? And then 7 days later, a time period generally the FISA court requests. 7 days later, they appear in court on the same day they hatched the Russian disinformation plot to renew the FISA warrant to spy on to spy on Carter Page and the Trump team by default. Nothing to see here, media folks. Don't you worry at all. All these timelines, it's just a coinky-dink, man. No worries. Everybody, all the Spygate plotters meet in the Obama Oval Office. 7 days later, magically, a FISA warrant appears. On the same day, they hatch a plot to say, no, it was Russian disinformation. It wasn't the Steele dossier.
You just heard The Dan Bongino Show. You can also get Dan's podcasts on iTunes or SoundCloud. And follow Dan on Twitter 24/7 @DBongino.